Defend yourself against DDoS attacks by hiding your true IP address with ExpressVPN, and visit my custom link expressvpn.com/ghilliemaster in the description to find out how you can get an extra 3 months free. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has finally come. The Titan 250D is now officially in gtaonline. As you know, I've been using this early over the past few months, but I refrained from making my guide just in case they changed things about the aircraft before release, and I'm happy to say that they did actually buff it in one very important way, and also slightly nerfed it in another, which we will get into because this video, I'm going to be telling you everything that you need to know about the Titan 250D. Its stats, armor, strengths, weaknesses, and how to best use it in combat to destroy the lobby. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. But first, I want to thank my friends Ender and Y7 for helping me record and test for the video. Now, going over the Titan's 3 gun placements located on the left side of the vehicle. The main one is the massive 105mm cannon. This is your most reliable weapon on the Titan 250D, sporting a blast radius of 20 meters and a middle blast radius of 15 meters. It will do a whopping 1000 damage at the center of the explosion and 100 on the outer edge of the explosion, which means if you do hit someone on the very outer edge, they will survive it. The strange thing about these stats though is that even though it has a dedicated mid radius, it doesn't have a damage at mid value, which means it will just do 1000 damage until the very edge where it only does 100 damage. Just to compare, this ties the biggest possible explosive weapon radius with the orbital cannon, so the 105mm cannon essentially shoots orbital cannon blasts that deal less damage than the orb does. But it does have a long cooldown between firing of 8 seconds, so every time you fire it, you have to wait 8 seconds before firing it again. And you can absolutely snipe people with this gun because it has a range of 500 meters. Up next is the 40mm cannon, the mid-tier weapon. This has a max range of 300 meters, so a little bit less than the 105. It actually used to be 500 meters, but Rockstar slightly nerfed it before release. It has a blast radius of 2.5 meters and a damage value of 450 at its center and 80 at the edge. This one you do get 5 shots before having to do a 6-second reload, and it fires at 120 RPM or 2 times a second. And if I'm being honest, this is probably the worst cannon out of the 3, I would say. It will one-shot a player as long as you hit them near the center of the blast radius. If not, then they will just flap into the air and you have to hit them again with a follow-up shot. And finally, we have the 25mm gun. This one, just like the 40mm, has a max range of 300 meters. Again, it used to be 500, but Rockstar nerfed it just like they did for the 40mm. The blast radius is a tad bit smaller than the 40 at 2 instead of 2.5 meters, and it does 250 damage if it's a direct hit, or 50 damage if it's at the edge. In order to kill a player, you pretty much need to direct hit them with this, which is quite difficult when they're actually flying in the sky and have to deal with the Titan itself moving at the same time when you're trying to aim. It's not the easiest thing to do, especially with the slow sensitivity. You really don't want to be using this for shooting people on foot. You want to use it for taking out vehicles instead. It's actually the fastest gun to destroy armored vehicles compared to the other two. Which might sound confusing because I was comparing the 105mm cannon to the orbital cannon, which instantly kills vehicles. The orbital cannon does have a flag, though, that instantly kills vehicles if it hits it with direct explosion damage, and the 105 cannon does not have that, and it also just deals less damage with its explosion in any case. The 105mm is actually kind of bad at dealing with armored vehicles. As you can see by the footage here, it's taking forever to take out the Night Shark, and that is partially because it has the longest cooldown between shots, so it's spending most of the time just reloading compared to the 25mm, which can deal constant damage with only a few seconds of reloading each time. Now, to give you a good visual of the weapon ranges, I've displayed a marker here to represent the 500 meters of the 105 gun range and 300 meters of the other two. I will say when you are shooting down at targets, the range will be less because this is a strictly horizontal showing. When you shoot at an angle, you're going to get less horizontal distance, so you have to take that into account. But the 105 gun, at least, still has a ton of range. You're going to snipe people with this. Unfortunately, if you are using the Titan 250D while solo, you only have access to the 40mm cannon when entering the autopilot by holding right D-pad, which is really bad. I'm not going to sugarcoat it in any way, it's really bad. Not being able to utilize the 105 cannon is a huge blow to the effectiveness in combat with the Titan. The 40mm is the worst cannon of the three, which also received a nerf to its range, making it even worse than before. As a solo vehicle, I would say the Titan 250D is a C-tier aircraft, and with at least one gunner, it jumps all the way up to S-tier. In fact, it might even be the single best spawn-trapping vehicle next to the Hunter paired with a gunner, and you'll see why when we discuss strategies with the plane. In the armor department, the Titan 250D excels tremendously. It is the most armored plane in the entire game unless you count the Avenger, taking 12 RPGs to blow it up, 12 homing rockets, 35 explosive rounds, or 25 railgun shots. And quite possibly the single greatest buff in GTAonline's history is the buff to this thing's tail armor. Remember how I made those 2 videos months ago talking about how the Titan would lose its control surfaces if it just got shot or hit by one rocket or explosion of any type in the back, and that would make its armor just completely useless because you couldn't control the plane at all if its tails got shot off? Well, Rockstar did listen to our feedback regarding this, and they changed it so that the control surfaces simply cannot be shot off by any explosives no matter how many times you shoot them, which increases the survivability tenfold. It feels so much better with this change. However, I will admit the armor amounts are a tad bit inflated because those are how many it takes to completely explode the plane. What ends up happening when you're using this is your engines will take fewer hits to disable them, and when that happens, you are essentially done for. If you are continuously damaging the plane, the first engine will cut out after the first couple of rockets or a few rockets or explosive rounds hits it, and then after a few more, the next set of engines will cut out, and you're just left gliding for the next few rockets until it blows up eventually. There is a little trick you can do to extend the life of the plane though when this does happen. If your engines are entirely destroyed and you find yourself falling from the sky, if you just go into autopilot, no matter what, your plane will fly forward without losing altitude. So you can see right here, my engines are just completely taken out. But I'm able to actually turn the aircraft around and fly all the way back to the airport in a straight line, even exiting autopilot for a few seconds to adjust my flight path here and there. You can utilize this in combat to avoid crash landing in a bad area, or to retreat to a location to then jump out to safety where you can get another Titan maybe. Now let's go over how to use this plane in the most effective way in combat. I will tell you, how well this plane performs is entirely dependent on how your pilot flies it. Perfect synergy between pilot and gunner allow this plane to be one of the deadliest threats to ground targets in the entire game. For attacking people on foot, your gunner should be only using the 105mm, and your pilot should be circling the target from very far away to maximize the range of the 105mm cannon. Remember, it has a massive 500-meter range. A lot of pilots don't take advantage of this and get too close, which is a grave mistake. The reason you want to stay far away like this is, number one, you make it much harder for the enemy to hit you with things like the railgun or homing missiles, and most importantly, number two, you give your gunner an open view of the entire battlefield. Notice how this entire time I have full view of every possible spawn point the enemy could appear at, so that the moment he spawns in, all I have to do is slightly adjust my aim trajectory to the right or left and take the shot. Whereas if you get too close, the Titan then has to readjust more often and come back around, which leaves you open to get shot and take damage. And in order to make adjustments in my aim as a gunner, I have to correct way more because I'm closer to the target, which often results in missed shots. Because if the Titan has to make an adjustment to its flight path, well, that's also gonna make my aim get thrown off because it's not being steady. If you are piloting the Titan, you want to limit your usage of turns where you go on your side. You want to be turning using the rudders and a slight bank so that your gunners can always have a shot on target. And you can only do that by being far from the target. It's also very important to utilize holding down the X or square button as a pilot. This allows you to make fine adjustments to your piloting. By being able to see what your gunners see, you can just slightly tilt the aircraft so that they can get a better shot, or just make minor corrections in your positioning. And this footage of us using the Titan at the beach while I'm piloting is a perfect example of how to pilot the aircraft correctly. We're at a good distance to where it's really hard for them to shoot back at us, well within range of the 105mm cannon though, and I'm using the gunner cam to make fine adjustments to my positioning here so that I know he has a good shot on target, all while we go in a nice circle utilizing the left bumper to make a slight turn. If you can get good at either piloting or being a gunner in the Titan, you can absolutely annihilate lobbies, destroying tryhards on the ground, making them Evo loop over and over with the Titan by doing this. It is extremely effective. We've done it many times now. Now you might be wondering, how can you even hit your target if you don't see him? The render distance is just awful. It's terrible. Well, this is why the 105 cannon is the only one you want to be using to hit people on foot. What you do is you look at your minimap, and then based on their position on the minimap, you aim for that spot on the actual map and fire. The 20-meter blast radius does everything else for you. If you are slightly off, it doesn't matter because the blast radius is so big that they'll still get hit and die. You don't need to see your target with the 105, you just need to have good knowledge of the minimap and how it correlates to the actual map. If plane bombs had a bigger blast radius, they would probably be just as good at this too, where you could bomb based on the minimap position as opposed to having to actually see the target. I really am not a fan of the nerf to the other two cannons range because if you are utilizing this strategy to engage the target from this range, well then your other two gunners just can't engage because the weapon ranges conflict with one another, whereas before all three guns could engage from the same exact range. Plus, kills with anything but the 105 cannon are very hard to come by because you're talking about hitting someone with a 2.5 or 2 meter blast radius compared to a 20 meter blast radius from 500 meters out. You basically have to be dead on accurate without being able to see the target, which is near impossible. So the Titan absolutely excels at air to ground if you have a gunner, but it also has a very obvious weakness. Any aircraft that gets behind the Titan, or even the Presser Mark II for that matter, you just cannot do anything in the Titan against that. You can't outmaneuver the plane unless the enemy pilot is completely horrible. You can't dodge homing missile spam unless you do evasive maneuvers while flying in a downward direction to gain speed, which isn't going to save you forever because once you go down, well, then you're basically screwed from there. And you can't return fire because they are behind you, not within sight for the gunners. So its weakness is just being engaged by any other aircraft, which makes sense considering the AC-130 is meant strictly for attacking things on the ground, and the Titan is based on the AC-130. And I guess you could also say its weakness is explosive rounds too, but if someone is shooting you with explosive rounds on the ground, any competent Titan group is going to be able to return fire on the E-round user and probably kill him 5 times before going down. Unless you're getting targeted by a group of players all shooting you with E-rounds, there's not really much you can do about that, unfortunately. But since the tail issue is fixed, you're not going to be getting instantly disabled by just one explosive round from across the map. It's going to take them dozens to bring you down if they're shooting at you with explosive sniper rounds. One last thing I want to go over, if you take the livery and countermeasures off of the Titan 250D, you can enter the cargo bay area and even drive vehicles into it to carry them around. However, I would not suggest doing this because what happens is tons of mini collisions occur in the back, which damages both the aircraft and the vehicle being carried. So if the car isn't armored, it's going to blow up in the back of the plane. And if the vehicle is armored, like a Night Shark, then the Titan is going to die from non-stop collision damage after a short time. The reason the Bambushka works best for this is because it has a very, very, very low modifier for collision damage. It hardly takes any damage from collisions, which is why you can just body slam other aircraft and it always survives, or smash into buildings and just seemingly take no damage. Whereas the Titan 250D does not. It takes a lot of damage from crashing into things. So you may be able to carry a cell mission boxfill across the map, for example. That strategy might work with the Titan 250D, but I would not recommend it. Overall, the Titan 250D with its tail armor fix is one of the most fun vehicles in gtaonline. As long as you have at least one other person so you can utilize it to its full potential using all of the guns available. Using it solo is just not very good, unfortunately. Rockstar does have the power to change every aspect of the Titan 250D's weapons through background updates though. It's how they actually nerf the range of them. So what I would like to see happen is just a slight buff to the blast radius of the 40mm, considering it's a 60% increase in the size of the shell from 25 to 40mm, but only a 25% increase in blast radius. I think if they increased it to maybe 3.5 or 4 from the current 2.5, it would feel a lot better to use. And I also think they should restore the 500-meter range for both the 25mm and the 40mm guns personally. I just don't feel that nerf was necessary. Those two changes would make the Titan feel just better to use as a solo player, which a lot of people are in gtaonline. It would kind of make the viability gap between being a solo player and a group player on the Titan a bit smaller. I understand wanting to incentivize people using it as a team, so only having access to the other two guns by having gunners makes sense, but at the same time, it is just not good using the 40mm solo and trying to autopilot and just having that tiny window to be able to shoot someone, and you have to be dead on accurate, otherwise you're not going to kill them. It just doesn't feel good. But let me know what you guys think of the Titan 250D down in the comments. Are you enjoying the aircraft, or do you find it not that good? And do you also agree with my buff proposition for it? If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful, Feel free to leave a like as well as subscribe to my channel for more GTA Online content. I'll have guides up for the Iron Mule and the Duster 300H next. And sorry this video kind of took me a few days to get out. I just wanted to make sure I put as much info into it as possible because it is an in-depth guide after all, and I just don't like to rush these videos out, especially one for the Titan, which is a massive plane with a lot to it. I also want to give a huge shout out to all of my channel members for your support. If you'd like to become a member for some exclusive perks, you can either use the join button or the link that's down in the description. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great day.